This is a game between Sergei Tiviakov and Wely. It was played in 1995, and it shows some very interesting attacking ideas for white in the open Sicilian in the Scheveningen variation. So the opening went e4, c5, the Sicilian defense, and pretty soon we end up in the Scheveningen variation, which is characterized by the pawns on d6 and e6. White prevents b5 with a4, black develops the knight to c6, both sides develop as usual. This is a very well-known position. Here rook e8 is the main line, and the white transfers the bishop to f3. And the bishop here is going to be well placed. It's going to be looking at the long diagonal, which potentially sometimes allows white to play e5. There's also another idea behind this. Black goes bishop d7. The idea of this move is to capture on d4 and then free up the c6 square and play bishop to c6. So white commonly prevents this by playing knight to b3, and this is the main line. Here black sees that white is threatening with pawn to a5, and that would control the b6 square pretty well, so he prevents that by playing b6 himself. And now white notices that black's pieces are a little bit crowded, and that the knight on f6 doesn't have very good squares, so he advances with g4, threatening to play pawn to g5, which would force the knight to retreat, and black has to spend time freeing up the square on d7 by playing bishop to c8, which is a retreat, but this is forced. Now g5, and it goes to d7 because that's the best, well, that's the only good square. And now white plays bishop to g2. So now the bishop here on g2 is going to be still covering up the king a little bit, and at the same time controlling some important squares on the long diagonal. And since white has kind of committed on the king side by advancing all the pawns, he has to continue in that flavor, and he has two main options. Either to play rook to f3 first, or to play queen h5, but he basically wants to attack on the h-file, and doubling up the heavy pieces on the h-file is a common way of doing it. So goes queen to h5. This is actually the first time this move was played in this position, but this was back in 1995, and black didn't quite cope with all the tricks of the position, but for now it makes sense to play pawn to g6, just force the white queen away, because in addition to threatening rook f3 and then rook to h3, white's also possibly looking into playing f5 and then attacking on f7 once the f-file opens up. So black played pawn to g6, and here white kind of has three reasonable retreats along the h-file. Like all the squares are possible moves. In this game he played queen to h3. That doesn't go well with the idea of coping, with the idea of doubling on the h-file, but from here the queen is looking at the e6 square, and this is going to be helping white when he plays pawn to f5, if he ever does. Black, on the other hand, noticed that, well, white's kind of looking with all his pieces on the king side and he wants to counter-attack. Later it was discovered that it's more safe here to play first bishop to f8, possibly transfer the bishop over to g7 and just kind of make another defensive move before beginning the counter-attack. But in this game black rushed in to attack the pawn on c2, opens up the bishop, and opens up the queen, so it has a lot of good aspects, this move, knight to b4. But white has his own idea, so he attacks with f5. Here the best move was probably to take, or to play, it was even possible to play knight to e5, but here black made probably a critical mistake. He underestimated white's ideas of attack on the f-file, so he took on c2, and that seems very strong because he's attacking the bishop, attacking the rook, and if he doesn't get checkmated then he's gonna do really well here. But there's a problem. So white takes, and black takes with the f-pawn, and he's not even afraid of white capturing on e6, because then the king would just go away to the corner and be reasonably safe. So white here came up with quite a stunning blow. He noticed that, well, there's not that many pieces defending the king, and white's putting pressure on the h-file and on the f-file, and he used that to his advantage. So here came the stunning blow, rook to f7. If this works, then that means things are going really well for white, and here it does work. So this attacks the pawn on h7 twice. It's definitely not desirable to take, well, because then white's gonna take on h7, and then the rook is gonna come to f1, and it's just gonna be all over for white and for black. So black played the only defensive move, just trying to protect h7. But this allows white to double up on the f-file, and now white just has too many threats. He's going to be threatening with queen to h6, and black has no good defense, so he tried to counterattack with queen to c4, but he doesn't really have a threaten to take on b3 because this is always too slow. So white went bishop to d2 just so that the bishop doesn't get captured, and after e5 he played knight to d5 because now the d5 square became available. Exchanges happen, and now again black tries to stop queen to h6, but that doesn't work because white takes, the king tries to run, and now the final important move with rook to g7. White's threatening to come in with a queen, and black has really no good defense against this. He played knight h7, but after queen e6 black resigned because white's threatening to take on h7 and then to give checkmate. It's a pretty nice game. It shows that in the Sicilian defense, if white manages to break through with the attack, he can win very quickly, and black should definitely hope to defend against that attack, because then his pressure on the queen side would count for a lot, although in this game it didn't quite work out for black.